Starscream could credit his ability to tolerate massive dosages of pain to being in service with Megatron for so long. Once you've had your ass handed to you by the Decepticon tyrant, you were liable to survive most anything else. And given all the beatings he'd gone through, Starscream might as well be a roach. Try as you might, bring out your armies and your best shots, it was impossible to keep the Seeker down for too long. Still, that wasn't to say that Starscream was immune to pain. Definitely not, nor was he fearless of it. Starscream avoided injury as much as possible, even if most of the time this made him somewhat of a coward. Still, self-preservation wasn't a weird concept. Sometimes it paid off to turn tail and run. Sometimes a fool was the one who continued fighting, and the wiser he who retreated. Though now his pain receptors had helped him through the majority of the examination. There was no fitting word to describe exactly what this was. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't exactly an experiment. The word punishment had been thrown around, but Starscream wasn't so sure that it was either. It was a game. Yes, a game that would most likely suit the situation best. And it was obvious Starscream lost. He did not go down without a fight, even if said fighting was hurling insults and threats and frustrated shrieks. Then the pain kicked in, and everything was a blur he was thankful for. However, halfway through this game of sorts, Starscream's body began to shut down. His receptors were glitching. Every second they switched off, he could feel the tendrils of stabbing pain work their way through his circuitry. Before anything got too intense, the receptors flickered back to life. The time between each moment of pain and numbness began to dwindle. 3 minutes, 2 minutes. Soon his pain receptors would either switch off completely or scramble and leave him completely open to the pain. Starscream looked down at himself. He was simply a torso now, his bottom half having been meticulously ripped and cut away. Intestine-like cords and wires hung limp from his innards. However, his captain was smart. He knew what to cut and what to leave intact so Starscream would not bleed out. At least, not too much. The energon smelled thick, puddled some feet below him. One arm was missing. Its removal had not been as neat as the rest of his torture. He didn't want to think about the state of his wings, or even if they were still there. Starscream's anger subsided into fear and determination. He wasn't screaming or crying anymore. His vocalizer felt dry and ragged. No, right now, he had to focus on keeping himself alive, although he knew that was also the intent of his captor. Still, the idea that if he were close to death, the bastard who dragged him there would only yank him back did not sit well with him. Not comforting in the least. He'd lived on his own terms, and so he'd die on them as well, and he was not going to die.
You know, I thought you'd be broken down and blubbering for Vector Sigma by now.
The voice was cold and heckling, thick like smoke wafting from the shadows. Starscream looked up, dim optics narrowed, his grit teeth together, attempting to conceal any of his fear with disgust and hatred. It wasn't very hard. A pair of twin red optics stared back at him, and he could almost hear that oily smile spread upon those equally ugly faceplates. Heavy, uneven footfalls, and the Decepticon, though he wore the symbol, he insisted he was not aligned with anyone, approached the Seeker. He stopped a foot from him, eye level. Starscream might have been taller than the mech, but the fact that he was missing his legs and pinned to the wall like a butterfly...
You're pretty tough, kid. Color me surprised.
Starscream glowered.
Let me down.
The curses and threats had been useless. Now it was cold, simple. He sounded more sincere than he did while he was being taken apart, piece by piece. The mech grinned, showing a gap between the top ridge of Denta.
Nah,
he said.
I've been given instructions, remember? Don't worry. I told you, I ain't gonna kill you.
He raised an arm. In place of a hand, a terrible curled sickle, its end blade sharp and tainted with energon. He pat his hook gently, in a patronizing manner against the side of Starscream's head.
So don't you worry your pretty scared little processors about it.
Starscream breathed, and he could hear his body cycling the air in an unhealthy growl.
Will let me down. No.
Starscream finished with a pained gasp as the rod was slammed clean through his chest, a mere calculated inch below his spark chamber. His only hand reached out, grabbed it tightly, pulled it with all his remaining strength. He managed to loosen it, but only a couple inches. Starscream's armor rattled. The dizziness during his torture returned, only stronger now, 10 times worse. He shuddered, his optics closed, teeth biting down until they were about to crack.
Had to focus. Had to stay alive. Pull, come on, get it out. Pull. You can do it, for Primus' sakes!
That ought to keep you busy for the next few cycles.
The mech sneered. He gently pushed on the rod, and Starscream choked on a small cry.
Good on ya! Though, your glitching scepters ought to go offline for good in 5 clicks, so you won't be feeling a minute bit of pain soon.
He chortled.
But it ain't so much the pain that bothers you, right, Starscream? Your body's halfway to the well, but your pride's already burning in the pit.
Starscream frothed.
Lockdown.
Lockdown smiled crookedly. The only way he knew how, in fact.
But no, this ain't anything personal, kid. I'm just following orders.
He nodded to the nearby view screen.
You're lucky in a way. The arachnid was called out on duty and I took her place. She's far worse than me.
He mocked a proud sniff and wiped an invisible tear away with his hook.
Taught her everything she knows. I'm proud of my little fam.
Spare me. Familial dramatics.
Starscream growled. Lockdown snickered.
Guess I was wrong,
he said. He shoved the rod in harder, so it ground farther into the wall, grinding through the Seeker's innards.
Your pride still got a little venom to spare.